A millionaire marries a plus-size woman on a bet and uncovers an unexpected secret. So, here's the deal. A cocky millionaire takes on a bold bet: marry the first woman his friends choose. Enter Mariana, a talented and confident chef, rocking 330 pounds of pure authenticity, completely unaware of the game behind the proposal. But here's the twist: can love actually bloom where only interests were planted? And what happens when the truth finally comes out? This is one gripping story you don't want to miss. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated and never miss these stories. San Isidro was a town of extremes. On one side, the shimmering glow of mansions in luxurious neighborhoods. On the other, streets filled with simple stories, rich in soul. At the center of this duality was Leonardo Ferrer, a man whose fortune was rivaled only by the coldness of his heart. Owner of a chain of multimillion-dollar businesses, he saw life as a game, and he liked to win. Leonardo was the kind of man who rarely heard the word no. With steely eyes and an arrogant smile, he moved through elite circles like a king, always surrounded by sycophants. But that night, at the exclusive Golden Club, he was more bored than usual. Glasses of expensive wine floated among the guests, but even the laughter and soft piano chords couldn't fill the emptiness gnawing at him. "Let's spice things up," said Ricardo, one of his closest friends and partner in countless wild adventures. "How about a bet?" Leonardo raised an eyebrow. He loved challenges, especially ones that tested his nerve or lack thereof. "Depends on what you've got in mind," he replied, swirling his wine glass between his fingers. Ricardo's grin turned mischievous. "Marry the first woman we point out." The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by the muffled laughter of a few onlookers. Leonardo scanned the room, gauging the expectant faces. It was a bold wager, even for him, but the challenge stirred something in his ego. "Deal," he declared, raising his glass in acceptance. As applause erupted, no one could have guessed how much that decision would change Leonardo's life, and the life of the woman caught in his path. The next day, Ricardo and the others chose the location to find the lucky one. A community fair in the humble neighborhood of San Isidro. It was the kind of place Leonardo despised, but he stuck to the agreement. His expensive clothes and haughty demeanor stood out among the locals, who watched him with curiosity. That's when they saw her. Mariana Soares, a woman with a warm smile and sparkling eyes, stood behind a booth serving traditional dishes. She was the opposite of everything Leonardo considered ideal, full-figured and radiating unpretentious confidence. "Her," Ricardo declared, pointing at Mariana. Leonardo narrowed his eyes, irritation flaring. "Fine." Taking a deep breath, he approached her, determined to wield his trademark charm. When Mariana noticed him, she looked up with a curious expression. "Can I help you?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "As a matter of fact, yes. My name's Leonardo. I'd like to invite you to dinner." The words came out rehearsed, almost mechanical. Mariana tilted her head, studying him. Something in her seemed to distrust the approach, but out of curiosity, she smiled. "All right, but only after my shift." The agreement was sealed then and there, and Leonardo felt a mix of relief and discomfort. He was used to winning women over quickly, but Mariana seemed different. That night, Mariana arrived at the restaurant Leonardo had chosen. It was a sophisticated venue, adorned with crystal chandeliers and a menu that would intimidate anyone unaccustomed to fine dining. But Mariana wasn't fazed. "Do you always bring women here?" she asked playfully, flipping through the menu. Leonardo smiled but felt uneasy at the question. Let's just say it's one of my favorite spots. The conversation flowed in an unexpected way. Mariana was straightforward and genuine, qualities Leonardo wasn't used to encountering. She talked about her life, her love for the restaurant she'd inherited from her grandmother, and her dream of expanding it. Leonardo, on the other hand, struggled to keep up, feeling small in the face of her passion. As the evening went on, something strange happened. Leonardo laughed. Genuinely, Mariana had a way of disarming him with her simplicity and sharp sense of humor. He was so used to playing power games that he didn't know how to handle someone so authentic. When he dropped her off at home, an awkward silence lingered between them. Mariana looked at him, assessing. "Thanks for tonight. It was different." Almost without thinking, Leonardo took her hand. Their eyes met, and an impulse drove him to kiss her. It was an intense, unexpected kiss, brimming with an emotion he couldn't name. Mariana pulled back slightly, surprised, but smiled. "Good night, Leonardo." In the days that followed, Leonardo couldn't get Mariana out of his mind. He returned to her restaurant repeatedly, finding excuses to see her. Meanwhile, Mariana, though also feeling something for him, kept a certain distance. "Why are you so interested in me?" she asked one evening as she closed up the restaurant. Leonardo hesitated. He knew the truth, the bet was unforgivable, so he opted for a half-truth. "You make me feel something different." Mariana laughed but didn't press further. There was something in her eyes that suggested she, too, had her own secrets. That night, as they strolled through the town square, Leonardo felt a sudden surge of courage. "Mariana, will you marry me?" The question caught Mariana off guard. She blinked, trying to process it. "Are you serious?" Leonardo nodded, though uncertainty swirled in his chest. Mariana studied him for a long moment before replying. "If you can prove you mean it, maybe I'll say yes." And so began a journey that would change both their lives forever. Over the next few days, Leonardo found himself working at her restaurant, doing tasks he'd never imagined himself doing. He washed dishes, chopped vegetables, and even served tables. Clumsy at first, he eventually surprised Mariana with his determination. One particularly busy afternoon, Mariana watched as Leonardo handled a table full of impatient customers. He smiled, cracked jokes, and somehow managed to keep everyone happy. When he finally had a moment to catch his breath, she approached him. "It's not as easy as it looks, is it?" she asked, handing him a glass of water. Leonardo laughed, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "Definitely not. But I'm learning from the best." Mariana smiled, her heart skipping a beat. There was something genuine about the way he was putting in the effort. Maybe he was serious after all. That evening, as they closed up the restaurant, the tension between them was almost tangible. Mariana was organizing the silverware when Leonardo quietly approached her. "Can I ask you something?" he said, breaking the silence. She looked up, curious. "Sure. What's holding you back?" he asked, his voice soft but intense. "You seem so confident about everything, but when it comes to us, it feels like you're running away." Mariana was silent for a moment, her gaze dropping to the floor. Then she took a deep breath and answered, "Because I don't want to get hurt, Leonardo. And you seem like the kind of man who could do that without even realizing it." Leonardo stepped closer, gently touching her face. "I don't want to hurt you, Mariana. I want to protect you. I want to," he hesitated. But before he could finish, he leaned in and kissed her. The kiss was long, intense, and filled with suppressed emotions. When they finally pulled apart, Mariana looked at him with a mix of surprise and vulnerability. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll marry you." The wedding was arranged quickly, just as Mariana wanted, simple and intimate. The ceremony took place in the garden of a small local church, with only a few guests. On that day, Leonardo seemed like a different man. He smiled genuinely, held Mariana's hands firmly, and recited his vows with a sincerity that left no room for doubt. But deep down, he knew the truth about the bet was a ticking time bomb. The closer he got to Mariana, the more he dreaded the moment she would find out. During the reception, while the guests toasted and danced, Mariana noticed Leonardo was deep in thought. She approached him, taking his hand. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Leonardo smiled, though his eyes betrayed something else. "Yeah, everything's great." That night, in a small chalet Leonardo had rented for their honeymoon, the two were finally alone. Mariana, dressed in a simple white robe, sat on the bed while Leonardo looked at her with an almost painful intensity. "Mariana," he began, his voice husky, "I need to tell you something." She frowned, concerned. "What is it?" He hesitated, guilt burning inside him. But before he could confess, Mariana interrupted. "I need to tell you something too," she said, averting her gaze. "There's something about me you don't know." Leonardo's stomach churned. Could it be that she had secrets of her own? "What is it?" he asked, trying to stay calm. Mariana took a deep breath, but before she could answer, a noise outside the chalet interrupted them. It was as if fate had decided to delay the moment of truth. They both stood, startled. When Leonardo opened the door, he found a tall, imposing man standing at the entrance. The man held a letter in his hand, his eyes fixed on Mariana. "Sorry to interrupt, but this message is urgent," the man said, handing her the letter. Mariana went pale as she took the envelope. Leonardo watched her, confused. "Who are you?" he asked the visitor. "An old friend," the man replied before turning and disappearing into the night. Mariana slowly shut the door, her hands trembling as she opened the letter. Leonardo, unable to contain his curiosity, asked, "Mariana, what's going on?" She looked up at him, her eyes filled with fear. "We need to talk, Leonardo. But not here, not now." The night that should have been filled with love and celebration became shrouded in mystery. Mariana seemed distant, lost in thought, while Leonardo tried to piece together the puzzle. Now, both of them knew they were keeping secrets, secrets that had the power to change everything. What do you think Mariana is hiding? And will Leonardo have the courage to confess about the bet? Leave your theories in the comments and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters of this story full of emotions and twists. The chalet, once a cozy retreat, now felt suffocating. Mariana clutched the letter in her hands, struggling to find the words to explain what was happening. Leonardo watched her, his heart pounding, trying to grasp the seriousness of the situation. "Mariana, you need to tell me what's going on," he pressed, his voice thick with tension. "Who was that man? What's in the letter?" Mariana lifted her gaze, and for a moment, Leonardo saw something he'd never seen before: fear. She had always seemed so strong and resolute since the day they met, but now she was vulnerable, almost defenseless. "Leonardo," she began hesitantly, "there are things about me you don't know. Things I never wanted to tell you because I thought I'd never have to." He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Whatever it is, you can trust me." Mariana took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and handed him the letter. As Leonardo read the carefully written words, his expression hardened. The letter read, "Mariana, the debt hasn't been forgotten, and there's no escaping now. You know what you must do. I'll await your response before the consequences become irreversible." Leonardo looked up, confused and alarmed. Debt? Consequences? Mariana, what does this mean? She turned her back to him, walking toward the window. The moonlight illuminated her face as she stared into the distance, as if searching for answers in the night sky. "Years ago, I made a deal with a powerful man," she said quietly. "It was before I opened the restaurant. I needed money and had no other way. I got the loan, but the price, it was much higher than I ever imagined." Leonardo frowned, trying to grasp the gravity of her words. "And now he wants you to pay it back?" Mariana nodded slowly. "Not just that. He wants me to go back to him." Leonardo's chest tightened at her words. "Go back to him? Are you saying he wants you?" "Yes." Mariana turned around, tears silently streaming down her face. "And he doesn't take no for an answer." Leonardo felt a mix of rage and despair. He didn't know who this man was or how far he'd go, but the thought of someone threatening Mariana was unbearable. "I won't let that happen," he said firmly. "You're my wife now, Mariana. I'll protect you." "You don't understand," she said, shaking her head. "This man, Ricardo, he's not someone you can negotiate with. He controls people, ruins lives." Leonardo gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Then we'll face him together. I have resources, connections. Whatever it takes. I won't let you go through this alone." Mariana hesitated. She wanted to believe him, but she knew Ricardo's influence was greater than Leonardo could imagine. "And you?" she asked, her tone shifting. "What are you hiding from me, Leonardo?" He froze, guilt washing over him. It was the moment to confess, but fear of losing her held him back. "Mariana, he started, but before he could continue, a noise outside the chalet interrupted them. Both fell silent, their eyes fixed on the door. Leonardo moved first, grabbing a heavy object for protection. Slowly, he opened the door to find an envelope left on the ground. It was also addressed to Mariana. Inside was a single photo. Mariana, taken that very day at the church while she said her vows. On the back was one word. "Remember." Mariana covered her mouth with her hands, horrified. Leonardo, on the other hand, felt rage boiling in his veins. "He's watching us," she whispered. "Then let's put an end to this," Leonardo said decisively. The next morning, Leonardo used every connection he had to find out who Ricardo was and how he could be stopped. He made calls, hired private investigators, and tapped into his network of influence to gather information. Meanwhile, Mariana watched from a distance, feeling a mix of gratitude and apprehension. She knew Leonardo was trying to protect her, but she also knew facing Ricardo wouldn't be easy. "Do you really think you can solve this with money?" she asked as he pored over documents in the chalet. "Don't underestimate what money can do to make problems disappear," he replied without looking up. "This isn't a problem you can throw money at, Leonardo," she said, stepping closer. "Ricardo isn't someone you can buy or intimidate." Leonardo looked up, finally meeting her gaze. "Then what do you suggest? That we just accept his terms?" "No," Mariana said firmly, "but we need to be smarter than him." As they discussed strategies, the two grew closer. Leonardo, typically so calculated and distant, began to show a more human side. And Mariana, always independent and strong, allowed herself to trust him. One particularly tense night, as they reviewed their plan to confront Ricardo, Leonardo took Mariana's hand. "We'll get through this, Mariana," he said, looking deeply into her eyes. She nodded, but tears began to fall. Leonardo pulled her into an embrace, holding her tightly. "No matter what happens, I won't let anything happen to you," he whispered, stroking her hair. Mariana looked up at him, gently touching his face. "Thank you, Leonardo. You didn't have to do this for me, but you're doing it." They kissed again, this time deeper, filled with trust and surrender. The tension gave way to a passionate connection, and that night, for the first time, they gave themselves completely to one another. The next day, Leonardo received a message from one of his investigators. Ricardo would be attending a luxurious party in the city that night. Leonardo saw this as the perfect opportunity to confront the man threatening his wife. "I'm going to meet him," Leonardo announced, grabbing his jacket. Mariana grabbed his arm, worried. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "It's time to end this." The night in San Isidro seemed darker than ever as Leonardo prepared to face Ricardo. He knew this wouldn't be a simple conversation, but more urgent than Ricardo's threats was his need to protect Mariana. For the first time in a long while, he felt he was fighting for something that truly mattered. Mariana, on the other hand, was trying to stop him. "Leonardo, you don't understand what you're doing. Ricardo isn't just any man. He has power, people, influence." Leonardo held her hands, his expression resolute. "And I have you. That's all that matters." Her heart softened at his words, striking a fragile chord within her. Though she wanted to protect him from Ricardo, she knew trying to stop him was futile. "Promise me you won't do anything reckless," she pleaded, her voice almost a whisper. Leonardo nodded, though his eyes betrayed the determination of someone ready to go to any lengths. Ricardo had organized a lavish party at his mansion, drawing politicians, businessmen, and influential figures from across the city. Leonardo arrived alone, dressed impeccably in a sharp suit, though his face betrayed the tension he felt. He was greeted by servers in formal attire and guests laughing and toasting as if living in an entirely different reality. As he walked through the grand hall, his eyes searched for Ricardo. There he was, at the center of the gathering, surrounded by admirers. A tall, imposing man with a cynical smile that froze any attempt at confrontation. Leonardo approached slowly. When their eyes finally met, Ricardo smiled, as if he had been expecting him. "Leonardo Ferrer," Ricardo said, extending a hand. "It's an honor to finally meet you." Leonardo ignored the gesture, his tone sharp. "We need to talk." Ricardo tilted his head, still smiling. "I assume this is about Mariana." Leonardo narrowed his eyes, his anger simmering beneath the surface at Ricardo's calm and condescending tone. "You need to leave her alone. She's my wife now." Ricardo laughed, a sound that echoed across the hall, drawing curious glances from the guests. "Your wife? Leonardo, you have no idea, do you?" Before Leonardo could respond, Ricardo gestured for him to follow into a private room. Once alone, Ricardo turned, his expression more serious. "Of course, she didn't tell you," he began, pulling an envelope from a drawer. "But Mariana isn't exactly the woman you think you know." Ricardo tossed the envelope onto the table. Leonardo hesitated before opening it, revealing a collection of documents. Photos of Mariana with Ricardo, contracts bearing her signature, and detailed accounts of the debt she owed. "She and I have a history," Ricardo said, stepping closer. She belonged to me long before you came into the picture, and I never really let her go." Leonardo felt his blood boil but forced himself to remain composed. "She chose me, not you." Ricardo smirked, his smile turning dark. "But does she know everything about you, Leonardo? Does she know you only met her because of a ridiculous bet?" The words hit Leonardo like a punch. He tried to mask the shock, but Ricardo clearly noticed his reaction. "That's right," Ricardo continued, clearly enjoying the moment. "I know all about the bet. Do you really think Mariana will forgive you when she finds out?" Leonardo took a deep breath, trying to regain control. "If she needs to know, it will come from me, not you." Meanwhile, back at the house, Mariana anxiously awaited Leonardo's return. She couldn't shake the growing sense that something terrible was about to happen. Then there was a knock at the door. When she opened it, Ricardo stood there, a cold smile on his face. "Mariana," he said, stepping inside uninvited. "We need to talk." "Ricardo, what are you doing here?" she asked, backing away. "Just helping you uncover the truth about your lovely husband," he said, handing her a small device. "Listen to this." Mariana pressed play, and her blood ran cold as she heard Leonardo's voice, clear and full of arrogance, agreeing to the bet with his friends at the club. Her hands trembled as she held the device, unable to look at Ricardo, who seized the moment to sow further doubt. "He never loved you, Mariana. You were just a game to him." When Leonardo returned home, he found Mariana sitting on the couch, holding the device Ricardo had given her. As soon as she saw him, she stood, her eyes filled with tears and anger. "Can you explain this?" she demanded, throwing the device toward him. Leonardo caught it, his face twisting in horror as he heard the recording. He knew he had lost control of the situation. "Mariana, I can explain," he started, but she cut him off. "Was this all a lie?" she shouted. "From the very beginning, were you just playing me?" Leonardo stepped closer, desperate. "At first, yes, it was because of the bet. But that changed, Mariana. You changed everything for me, and you expected me never to find out?" she asked, tears streaming freely. "Were you planning to keep lying to me forever?" Leonardo stood silent, unable to find words to undo the damage. Mariana brushed past him, gathering her things. "I can't do this, Leonardo. I need time." "Mariana, please don't go," he begged. But she was already at the door. "Don't look for me, Leonardo. Not until I decide if I can trust you again." And with that, she left, leaving Leonardo alone in the deafening silence of the house. What will Ricardo do now that he's succeeded in separating them? The early morning winds of San Isidro mirrored the emotional storm within Mariana. The gusts howled as she walked through the empty streets, each step echoing like the pounding of her heart, heavy with betrayal. She had left Leonardo behind, but the pain of his deceit weighed down every movement. With nowhere else to go, Mariana made her way to her restaurant. It was the only place where she felt some semblance of control, even as uncertainty consumed her. When she turned on the kitchen lights, a wave of nostalgia washed over her. These walls had always been her sanctuary, her source of strength. Yet, the question lingered, haunting her thoughts. Was Leonardo's love ever real, or was she nothing more than a game to him? As Mariana tried to sort through the chaos in her mind, a shadow appeared at the restaurant's entrance. Startled, she grabbed a knife from the counter but relaxed slightly when she recognized who it was. "Ricardo!" she exclaimed, a mix of surprise and irritation. "What are you doing here?" He stepped inside slowly, hands raised in mock surrender. Mariana, calm down. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here because we need to talk. She narrowed her eyes, not letting her guard down entirely. Talk? About what? Ricardo settled into one of the chairs, his posture casual, though his eyes betrayed intentions she couldn't quite read. About Leonardo, and about us. Mariana crossed her arms, standing firm. There is no us, Ricardo. That ended a long time ago. Are you sure? He asked with a sly smile. You may not see it now, but there's always been something between us. And Leonardo? He was just an intruder in this game. A pawn I used to bring you back to me. A chill ran down Mariana's spine. What are you saying? Ricardo leaned forward, his gaze piercing hers. I was the one who suggested the bet. I was the one who chose you, Mariana. And do you know why? Because I knew you'd come running back to me eventually. Her jaw dropped as his words sank in. You planned all of this? Ricardo chuckled softly, a mix of pride and cruelty in his tone. Of course, Leonardo was easy to manipulate, an arrogant millionaire desperate to feed his own ego. It was almost too easy. Mariana felt anger rise within her like a storm. You used me, Ricardo. You and Leonardo. You both made my life into a game. He stood abruptly, his expression darkening. And you? Did you think there wouldn't be consequences when you accepted the money I gave you? Did you think you'd walk away unscathed? Meanwhile, back at the house, Leonardo was drowning in regret. The emptiness left by Mariana's departure was suffocating. He knew he had to win her back, but he had no idea how. Late into the night, his phone buzzed with an unexpected call. Mr. Ferrer? A voice said on the other end. Who is this? Leonardo asked, confused. My name is Alvaro. I'm a private investigator, and I've been looking into Ricardo. I think you'll want to hear what I've discovered. Leonardo's brow furrowed, a mix of curiosity and hope sparking within him. Go on. Alvaro explained Ricardo's connections to criminal activities, blackmail, manipulation, and worse. But what struck Leonardo the hardest was learning that Ricardo had orchestrated the bet from the very beginning. He did it to bring Mariana back to him, Alvaro explained. You were just a piece in his plan. Leonardo's stomach churned. While he had made mistakes, the realization that he had been a pawn in Ricardo's scheme filled him with fury. Where is he now? Leonardo asked. At Mariana's restaurant, Alvaro replied. Leonardo grabbed his keys and rushed out the door. At the restaurant, Ricardo continued pressing Mariana, his voice dripping with manipulation. Leonardo can't protect you, Mariana. He's weak. And deep down, you know I'm the only one who can guarantee your safety. Mariana shook her head, refusing to let his words sink in. I'm not going back to you, Ricardo. You don't control me. Before he could respond, the restaurant door burst open, and Leonardo strode in, his eyes blazing with fury. Get out, Ricardo, Leonardo said, his voice low but filled with authority. Ricardo laughed, clearly amused by the scene. Well, the betrayed husband finally shows up. Here to save the day. Leonardo ignored the jab and turned to Mariana. We need to talk, but first I need to deal with him. Mariana, though confused, stepped back, giving the two men space. Ricardo crossed his arms, smirking. You think you can win, Leonardo? That you can keep Mariana away from me? Leonardo stepped closer, mere inches from his adversary. Mariana isn't a prize, Ricardo. She's a person, and she's already made her choice. The two locked eyes, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. For a moment, it seemed the standoff would escalate into violence. But then Ricardo chuckled, shaking his head as if tired of the game. "This isn't over, Leonardo," Ricardo said, his tone icy. "And when it is, you'll realize you never had control over anything." With that, Ricardo turned and left, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. As the door closed behind him, Leonardo turned to Mariana. "I know I don't have the right to ask this, but I need you to hear me out." She crossed her arms, her pain evident in her posture. "Why should I, Leonardo? After everything you've done?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Because I love you, Mariana. And yes, I started this for the wrong reasons. But none of that matters anymore. You're the only thing that matters." She studied him, searching for any hint of deceit. But all she saw was sincerity and a vulnerability she never expected from him. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Leonardo," she said, her voice cracking. "But I also know I don't want to lose you." He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Then let me prove I deserve you." Mariana hesitated for a moment before nodding slowly, allowing a small flame of hope to ignite between them. The dawn in San Isidro brought a false sense of calm. At the restaurant, Leonardo and Mariana shared a quiet breakfast. The warmth of the words exchanged the night before still lingered, but both knew they couldn't let their guard down. Ricardo wasn't the kind of man to accept defeat easily. "What do we do now?" Mariana finally broke the silence. Leonardo placed his cup on the table, his expression serious. "First, we protect you. Then we take him down." Mariana hesitated, exhaustion evident in her posture. She was tired of living under the shadow of threats and manipulation. But when she looked at Leonardo, she saw a man who had changed. For the first time, he seemed willing to risk everything for her. "I just want this to end," she said, her voice heavy with weariness. Leonardo took her hand, his eyes locked on hers. "It will end. Promise." Meanwhile, in a towering building downtown, Ricardo was plotting his next move. Sitting in his opulent office, he was accompanied by Roberto, his tall, stone-faced enforcer. "What's the plan?" Roberto asked, his voice low and grave. Ricardo slowly twisted the ring on his finger, a habit signaling deep thought. "Leonardo is playing a high-stakes game, but he doesn't know who he's up against." Roberto tilted his head, waiting for instructions. "Find out everything you can about his businesses," Ricardo continued. "Anything that can ruin him. And Mariana, keep someone on her. I want to know her every move." Roberto nodded and left the room. Ricardo turned to the window, his cynical smile returning. "This is far from over." That afternoon, Leonardo received a call from Alvaro, the investigator. "I've got something you need to see," Alvaro said urgently. Leonardo met him at a discreet cafe on the outskirts of town. Alvaro handed him an envelope filled with documents. "What is this?" Leonardo asked as he opened it. "Proof that Ricardo is involved in illegal activities," Alvaro explained. "Money laundering, blackmail, even connections to political corruption." Leonardo sifted through the papers, his mind racing. "Is this enough to bring him down?" Alvaro nodded. "If you take this to the authorities, Ricardo will be finished. But be careful. He won't go down without a fight." Leonardo stared at the investigator, a mix of relief and apprehension coursing through him. He finally had a weapon against Ricardo, but using it could put both him and Mariana in even greater danger. That night, as Mariana closed the restaurant, she received a call from an unknown number. Mariana, Ricardo's cold, calculating voice greeted her. I thought I should warn you about the man you're standing beside. What do you want, Ricardo? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. I just want you to know that Leonardo isn't as innocent as he seems. Maybe you should ask him about his failed deal in Barcelona, or how he managed to eliminate a competitor standing in his way. Mariana's stomach churned. She knew Ricardo was a master manipulator, but his words planted a seed of doubt. You're lying, Ricardo chuckled. See for yourself, Mariana. I'm just trying to help you avoid falling into another trap. Before she could respond, he ended the call. Mariana stood frozen in the restaurant, gripping the phone tightly. That same night, Mariana confronted Leonardo, the doubt still gripping her. Ricardo called me, she began, crossing her arms. He said you're hiding things. Leonardo furrowed his brow, feeling the weight of her words. And you believed him? I don't know what to believe, Leonardo, she snapped, her voice rising. He mentioned Barcelona, about you taking down a competitor. Leonardo took a deep breath, running his hands through his hair. He knew he couldn't avoid the subject. It's true, he admitted finally. I've done things in my past that I'm not proud of, but I've never hurt anyone directly. What does that even mean? Mariana asked, her voice quieter but still tense. It means I've played dirty to get where I am. I've used legal strategies, but unethical ones. I manipulated people, bought favors. And yes, I destroyed careers to protect my business. Mariana was silent, processing his confession. While it wasn't a revelation of heinous crimes, it was enough to shake the fragile trust she was beginning to rebuild. Why didn't you tell me this before? She asked, her voice trembling. Leonardo stepped forward, taking her hands in his. Because I wanted to be better for you. I've been trying to leave all of that behind. She looked into his eyes, searching for deceit, but all she found was genuine regret. I just need time to process this, Leonardo, she said, pulling away. He nodded, respecting her decision. I understand, but no matter what, I'll protect you, even if it costs me everything. Meanwhile, Ricardo was preparing his next move. Knowing Leonardo had something against him, though uncertain of what, he decided to use Mariana as bait. He sent her an anonymous message asking her to meet at an abandoned warehouse to discover the truth about Leonardo. Still confused and conflicted, Mariana decided to go without telling Leonardo. When she arrived, the atmosphere felt wrong. The place was dark, the door creaking loudly as she pushed it open. Hello, she called out hesitantly. Ricardo emerged from the shadows, his cold smile chilling her. Welcome, Mariana. She instinctively stepped back. What do you want? Just to make sure you understand who's really in control, he said, advancing slowly. Before Ricardo could act, the door burst open. Leonardo entered, flanked by Alvaro and 2 police officers. It's over, Ricardo, Leonardo shouted, his voice ringing with authority. Ricardo laughed, though the officers quickly restrained him and cuffed his hands. You think this will stop me, Leonardo? Ricardo sneered as they escorted him away. This is just the beginning. After the confrontation, Leonardo and Mariana were left alone in the quiet warehouse. She looked at him, still trying to process everything that had happened. You risked everything to save me, she said, her voice full of emotion. Leonardo shrugged, though his eyes shone with intensity. Because you're everything to me, Mariana. She smiled softly, though the road ahead was still uncertain. Maybe we can start over. But this time, no more secrets, He took her hand, his smile sincere. "That's all I want." Ricardo's imprisonment brought a fleeting moment of relief for Leonardo and Mariana, but the sense of victory quickly gave way to lingering anxiety. Ricardo was a powerful man, with deep connections and influence that stretched into the darkest corners of San Isidro. Even behind bars, his shadow loomed large. The next morning, Mariana woke up in Leonardo's apartment. Though she was still processing everything that had happened, being with him felt like the right place to be. As they shared breakfast, the voice of a news reporter on the television caught their attention. Ricardo Montenegro, accused of money laundering, blackmail, and fraud, is set to stand trial next week, the reporter announced. Leonardo switched off the TV and turned to Mariana. "This is only the beginning. We need to be ready." Mariana nodded, her gaze distant. "Do you think he'll really pay for everything? Or will he find a way to escape justice?" Leonardo took her hand in his. "If it's up to me, he won't get another chance." In the days leading up to the trial, Leonardo worked tirelessly with Alvaro to gather more evidence against Ricardo. They uncovered documents linking Ricardo to criminal schemes far more extensive than they had imagined. Meanwhile, Mariana grappled with her own internal struggles. Ricardo's manipulations had shaken her trust, not just in Leonardo, but also in herself. She began questioning her choices, her loyalties, and her ability to move forward. One evening, Leonardo found her sitting on the couch, staring into space. He sat beside her silently, then asked gently, "What's on your mind?" "Everything," she sighed. "Everything that's happened. Who I've become." She turned to face him. "I feel like I've lost a part of myself in all this." Leonardo cupped her face tenderly. "You're the strongest woman I've ever known, Mariana. And if you've lost something, we'll find it together." She smiled faintly, but the weight of her words lingered between them. The day of the trial arrived, and the courtroom was packed. Journalists, onlookers, and Ricardo's allies filled the hallways, creating a tense atmosphere. Mariana and Leonardo sat together, watching as Ricardo entered the courtroom with his signature cynical smile. The prosecutor presented the evidence gathered by Alvaro and Leonardo. Fraudulent contracts, suspicious financial records, and testimonies from individuals who had been manipulated by Ricardo. Each piece of evidence tightened the noose around him, yet Ricardo remained composed. When it was Ricardo's turn to testify, he used the opportunity to try to turn the tables. "It's fascinating," he began, his voice calm, "how Mr. Ferrer is so determined to destroy me. Perhaps it's because he himself isn't as innocent as he appears." The courtroom murmured, but the judge called for order. Ricardo continued, "This man, who now poses as a hero, built his fortune on questionable methods. So, I ask, who is really on trial here?" Mariana glanced at Leonardo, worry etched on her face. He, however, remained impassive, aware that Ricardo was trying to shift the focus. The trial proceeded, and by the end, the jury found Ricardo guilty on multiple charges. When the judge sentenced him to 20 years in prison, a collective sigh of relief filled the room. But Ricardo wasn't defeated. As he was led away in handcuffs, he turned to Leonardo and Mariana, his enigmatic smile unwavering. "This isn't over," he said. Even with Ricardo behind bars, Leonardo and Mariana couldn't ignore his parting words. Ricardo had powerful allies, and they knew they had to stay vigilant. In the days that followed, Mariana tried to return to her routine at the restaurant, while Leonardo focused on rebuilding their relationship. He understood that their love was still fragile, but he was determined to do whatever it took to prove himself worthy of her trust. One evening, as they were closing the restaurant, an envelope was slipped under the door. Leonardo picked it up and read the note aloud. "You may have won this battle, but the war is just beginning." Mariana's heart raced, and Leonardo clenched the note tightly, his eyes blazing with determination. "Whoever this is, they won't tear us apart." Despite the lingering threats, Leonardo and Mariana began to find small moments of peace. They spent more time together, away from the chaos, rediscovering the connection that had brought them together. One evening, as they walked along the beach, Leonardo stopped and took Mariana's hands in his. "I know we still have a lot to face, but I want you to know I'll never give up on us." She looked at him, her eyes glistening with tears, but also filled with hope. "Neither will I, Leonardo." They kissed, sealing a promise of love and resilience. Ricardo may be in prison, but is he truly defeated? What does the future hold for Leonardo and Mariana? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel to keep following this thrilling story.